Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to musician and technologist Lee Zukor. We talk about his wonderful band, The Long Honeymoon, who are playing TC Jewfolk's SukkotGiving on November 3rd, his evolution as a songwriter, and how elements of his day job and his hobby coexist on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Lee Zukor, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
You have one of the more interesting backgrounds of people that I feel like I've talked to recently. And everybody I've talked to is very interesting in their own right. I don't mean to disparage anyone.
But I'm the most interesting.
You are the most interesting, though, yes. But you have this really interesting background in both music and technology, user experience, tech development side of things. First of all, I guess, how do you find time for both of these projects? Because they both feel like they'd be incredibly time consuming.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for saying that. I think it turns out, there are a lot of people who do both. There are a lot of musicians who are technologists. There's something about, I think, the combination of creativity that really speaks to developers. There's something about the kind of mathematics of music that speaks to people who are in technology. So it actually is not that unusual for me to be meeting with somebody at work who's got guitars hanging in the back of their kind of Zoom session. I think like anything, if you love something, then you make time for it. And for me, those things complement each other really well. I think part of it is there's a community aspect, right? So when you're making music or when you're making software, you're working with a team. I love the team part of it. There's this creative part where you're solving problems in interesting ways. For me, what I have found that, there are things in life that you just lose all sense of time and place. For me, that's writing songs. And
Okay.
when I'm onto something, I feel like it's, I'm not somebody who misses a lot of meals, but when I'm working on a song and I'm into it and I feel like that, I could kind of miss everything around me. And there's not too many things in life that are like that. And so when you find something, I think you need to give it the time that it deserves.
There's this, I think, almost cliche that like a songwriting at a certain level, like some of these great songs that are out there, these artists will knock out in like 10 minutes on a napkin. They'll write, some of the great songs in history are knocked out that way. Others obviously require skipping many meals and going well into the evening on.
Yeah.
How do you go about developing songs in your songwriting? What do you look for as you put either pen to paper or fingers to keyboards, however you write?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've done it in a lot of different ways over time. So I've been writing songs since I was a kid. So I've probably been doing it for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes really actively and sometimes less actively. And I've had that feeling where like something comes to you and you just don't know exactly, what inspired it, but you write it down and you've got something that's fantastic. And then I've had the experience of just agonizing over things for months and then putting it away and then saying, okay, then maybe the time's just not right, or I don't have the right idea. So I've done it all those ways. The band that I'm currently playing with is called The Long Honeymoon, and that's been a really interesting and different experience for me. What happened was, so I played in bands really actively, the early 2000s, probably 2000 to 2000, I don't know, 10 or 15, something like that. And there was another band that my band played with a few times called the Humbugs, and I thought they were great. And the guy who wrote the songs in the Humbugs, his name is Adam, and he started posting during pandemic when everything was shut down. He was posting on Instagram a record a day that inspired. It was just whatever was in his collection.
Oh, okay.
So he was taking photos. It was often a picture of the record and his cat. And so it was, he'd see a Beatles record or a Billy Joel record or something like that. And I thought, yeah, I knew this guy had good taste.
Yeah.
But over time, he started looking at other things he started posting pictures of other things in his collection that seemed like they were, much more, I don't know, not personal exactly, but they were things where I felt like, oh, we go deeper than just the Beatles.
There's a connection there.
Yeah, it was like bands like the House Martins and Teenage Fan Club and, a bunch of other groups that I thought, well, not everybody loves all these groups. And so when things opened up a little bit after pandemic, I, like a lot of people, needed some inspiration, and I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, would you like to try writing some songs together?" And and we got together and we wrote a song the first time we got together, and we loved it. We still play it all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, and I think that really changed things because we partner on songwriting, which is not something that I've done as much of throughout my career as a songwriter, if it's that. And so the way that we do this is that we work on the music together, and then we work on a melody, and then we fit words into it, which is the opposite of everything I've done for the whole rest of my writing. And it's been fascinating and interesting and really challenging. But I'm happy with the results, and I like the challenge.
So how hard is that for you to really flip the switch in your brain to do things in a totally different way than you had been doing your entire songwriting career before that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I think partly because I started writing songs as somebody who felt like I had some things I wanted to say.
Mm.
And when you have a lot of things you want to say, you don't want to have to force them into a certain meter or verses or So to me, it was a little bit more free flowing, and this requires some discipline and
Yeah.
some efficiency and some economy of language and all these things that are great and hard. And I've been doing it for a long time. It's nice to have a little bit of something that makes it new.
Yeah, for sure. What makes a good band? Like you're on stage, through the for put the writing process aside. When it comes
Yeah.
to doing a gig or practicing, you're on stage or you're in a room and you're in a space with these people. What how do you know when it works and when it doesn't?
Yeah. Yeah, another really good question. So lots of times when I think about my family, I think of us as like a gang, like we're all I'm in a nice gang, like a
Yeah.
really nice family. Right. But like, hey, you don't mess with any of us because we're all together. We all love each other. We're all like we're a unit.
Yeah.
And I think if you can have some of that feeling with a band, then that's amazing. It's like we're not here because one of us is more talented than the others, or because one of us wants our name to be, the front. And at least the band that I'm playing with now, it's like everybody's there because they want to make something great together. And everybody is willing to, be in the front when the time requires and be in the back when the time requires. And I think there's this old Ringo Starr quote where somebody said something about like, "Oh, you're such a great drummer. How do you know, what to play in the drums?" And he said, I don't play the drums. I play the songs." And and I thought that was such a good way of saying like you do what the song requires. You have a vision as a band. And I've played in a lot of bands that haven't been that way over the years. The current one is just it's just great people who want to have fun and make something we're all proud of.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I am intuiting this. I think when you and I don't know how old you are, but like when you get to be a certain age, or like it's very clear that music is not your profession. Music
Yeah.
is um hobby slash, semi profession, but it's not your full-time. It's
Hobby's
not
okay. Yeah, no, you're right.
it's
You're
not
totally
your
right.
it's
Yeah.
not your full-time job. It's probably none of your full-time jobs in the long honeymoon, right? So it's like you're doing this for fun. You
Yeah.
should enjoy it and have fun with it.
Totally, totally. One of the things I like to say about this band is that the stakes are incredibly low. And I think in some weird way that's kind of led us to making some of the best music that we've ever made. I think all of us are incredibly proud of it because we're not scrambling to get ahead of somebody else or prove that we can do something, or we're all very competent, very experienced, and we're doing something we love.
And you're not trying to make a living off it either.
Right,
And
right.
I think when the stakes are lower, it's easier to enjoy. I mean, it's easier to enjoy it more. And obviously, the switch flips when you're like mega star, and it's just easy to do it because you love it, but you're also getting paid millions of dollars a show. They're very
Totally.
It's a very different
Yeah.
situation. I think most people, the vast majority of musicians, are probably in your camp.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think there's a period of adjustment. I think spent years writing songs and playing in bands and going to Nashville to write with people and really wanting to make it a career. And
Yeah.
there's a transition that happened where I think I needed to put down my guitar for a little bit when I was figuring out, okay, I don't think this is going to be my career anymore. I need to figure out how it fits into my life, and I need to love it for its own sake instead of hoping it turns into something. And that's an adjustment, and I think a lot of people um, don't make that adjustment, and I think it's fine either way. I just for me, I had to be able to look at my guitar and not think about it as something that was like a disappointment, you know,
Yeah.
like this has enabled me to do all sorts of things, and I still love it. And how do I approach it with that like creativity and openness and curiosity and love and all those things?
Was there one incident that happened, or was it something over a period of time when you realized, okay, I'm not making a career out of this?
Yeah. Yeah, I had been going to Nashville. I probably went there a half a dozen times or something like that over the course of 2 years.
Mhm.
And I met a songwriter who was fantastic, who had a couple of hit songs. And he liked my music and he invited me to come to Nashville and write songs with him for the weekend. And so I was really excited about it. And I showed up in Nashville with like three songs that I thought had some potential. I really thought that they were pretty good. And I brought them, and he and I worked on them all weekend. And I came back with those songs, and they sounded like, popular country songs. And I should start out by saying I'm not a huge fan of popular country music. It just felt like it was the most. I had talked to some people who are in the industry who had given me the advice that based on the music I was writing, it was kind of the most adjacent to what I was already good at. And if I
Okay.
could learn that, I could turn it into more of a career. So anyway, so I came back, I went with these songs that I thought were pretty good songs. I came back with really countrified versions of
Mhm.
those three songs. And I played them for my wife, and she listened to them and she said, wow, like I really like the songs that you went to Nashville with. And I'm not sure I love the ones that you came back with. Like, do you love them? And I listened to them. I remembered the conversation with the songwriter who was successful, who told me that, he had moved his family from California. He still worked full time as a plumber, even though he had hit songs. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure if I'm ready to move my family, sacrifice so many other things in life to write songs that I don't love. And I think if you don't love it, that felt like a lot too much sacrifice to me. And and then I kind of put my guitar down for a good year and
Wow.
uh and just had to get my head around what I really wanted.
It sounds like you're having a lot more fun now than you were then.
Yeah, I mean that's why I talk about the stakes being low, right? Like
Yeah.
I like every meeting doesn't feel like it has to lead to something, and every gig doesn't have to have the right people there. And like music should be fun, and the stuff that we play especially, it's meant to be joyous, and there are things that we take it seriously and we care, but we want to be entertaining people, and we want to be kind of throwing a party.
Yeah. Right. It should be like your entertainment, right? You should be entertaining the people who come to see you play. It should be
Yeah,
fun. And if you're not enjoying it on stage, the people in the room, at least my experience, really no matter the size of the room, if
yeah,
you're not enjoying it on stage, the room knows. The room can smell
yeah,
that out.
totally, totally. Do you play music at all?
I don't. I
No.
don't. I love listening to music. I took drum lessons as a kid. I tried guitar
Ah,
lessons
cool.
as a kid. I just rhythmically, I just didn't have it.
That's okay.
But like I have like my cousin is a bass player in a band here, several bands here for a lot of years and
Oh,
still
nice.
plays some. And I loved, 30 years ago his band had a regular gig at the 400 bar,
Yeah.
may
Yeah, I
it
love
rest
that
in
place.
peace. And
Right.
we would every Wednesday night show up to see him play, and it was a blast because they had fun. The crowd were all friends and family and
Yeah.
regulars, and it was a party every night, every Wednesday. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think it's such I can't think of too many other things that can kind of bring people together in the same way. When it works, it's magic.
the communal aspect of music
Yeah.
is like nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So switching gears a little bit, so your day job life is your, a independent contractor now.
Uh-huh.
How that's very different. That is, I mean, you're working, people contract you, so you're working with teams of other people, but you're more on your own as opposed to being in a band, which is more of a group effort. Is that
Yeah.
sort of, it feels like it's exercising two different, completely different muscles there.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm not even sure how to think about that. I do think even though I'm working as an independent consultant, I'm working with, teams of people,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely somebody who I really value collaboration. You probably can tell that already from the rest of our conversation,
Totally.
right?
100%. 100%.
So I mean, I love so the work I'm doing is right now I'm working with a couple of companies. One is on mobile strategy, and the other one is it's an agency that's trying to figure out kind of overall company strategy
Mm.
and what are their kind of biggest goals for the year and how do they achieve their those goals. I find those things to be really interesting. I like to solve problems. I like to collaborate and create. And I think a lot of those things kind of still get fed with the work.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it, I guess because, you talk about, so there is that collaborativeness, the sort of newfound collaborativeness for you in terms of the songwriting. It's not, it's not all that different from the rest of the work you've done, where you do work with teams of people at the various companies you've been with. That,
Yeah.
there is the teamwork element there. So that it's interesting that it came to songwriting, in the teamwork aspect, a little bit later, where you've had these, years of experience,
Yeah.
professionally.
Well,
It
yeah, I mean,
seems.
I think having a band is like having a team. And so I started this company. It's called Super Velo because it's super and because I like to ride my bike.
Ah,
And so that's the name of the company. And I started it only a few months ago in order to do some consulting. I've spent the last 20 plus years leading large teams.
mhm,
And so I really like the team piece. I will say, as a band leader, even if it wasn't necessarily collaborative song in terms of songwriting,
yeah,
it was always trying to pull a team together. And, there have been times when I thought, boy, this is exhausting at work, and I'm not sure I want it to be exhausting in my free time,
yeah,
right?
no, for sure.
People are wonderful and creative and talented and smart and also, hard. And so sometimes you have that at work and you don't want to kind of come back and have to negotiate with your band members. Um, but overall, I feel like it's been a good thing.
And that's where finding the right group of people to play in a band with totally works. And also, you mentioned, riding your bike. I think a lot of people think cycling is like a solitary
Yeah.
sport, but like when done well in a team, and I was explaining this to, watching this road cycling in the Olympics, it's like
Uh-huh.
it is teamwork
Yeah.
of countries pulling their riders along the road, and so you draft and you ride in a pack, and it's
Yeah.
teamwork.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. I will say I do sometimes like to be alone. So, so I mean, I do, I don't, I will say I tend to ride my bike by myself, and I think it is important to sometimes be kind of alone with my thoughts. I obviously, in order to have some creative time, I need to be able to carve time, for that as
Yeah.
well. Do you have
No,
a balance like that? Like you have like things that you like to do alone and things that you like to do with groups?
yeah, I mean, I also cycle, and also generally do so alone. Usually only ride on the weekends when I can.
Hmm.
Otherwise it's the Peloton over to my right that I,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
a couple days a week, and trade off with my wife, who gets to ride in the morning. But it's, you know, yeah, like going to, don't go to as many concerts now as I used to.
Yeah.
They're, it's exhausting. It's a lot. I feel it the next day, but like
Yeah.
going to Minnesota United soccer games with,
Oh yeah.
family and or friends, and like being in the communal aspect of seeing sports is
Yeah.
great. And then there are times where um I'm happy to sit and just, play a video game,
Yeah.
or just watch a show that my family has no interest in, and they'll leave me
Right.
alone either in the basement or on the couch. Like that's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
I cook. That's sort of my
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I'm sort of the chef that my wife plans the menu and I do the cooking. And
Yeah,
so
that's great.
there is, every once in a while people jump in and help, but for the most part, that's kind of my, if my daughter's watching a TV show that I have no interest in, I'll put my headphones in, I'll listen to music, I'll listen to a podcast, and I'll
Uh-huh.
just, you know, do the, do the meal. And
Yeah.
that to me it's a lot of work and it's a lot of running around and usually a ginormous mess in the kitchen, but
Uh-huh.
to me, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
by the end of the week, I'm less interested and
Yeah.
like to order in sometimes too.
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah. I think there's the relentlessness of the meals
right.
is challenging, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think there's a relentless, like, whether in work or hobby, like there is a certain relentlessness that eventually you just sort of have to stop and
Yeah.
find something else to do, whether it's alone, whether it's with a spouse or with friends or just, sitting by a bonfire and hanging out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's got to be some sort of break to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's really great if you are somebody who is aware of that for yourself, right? And can say, hey, this has been great family time, and I just need to take a bike ride by myself so that I can get some exercise and be alone with my thoughts and be better when I get back, right? And I
Yeah.
think everybody's kind of got their own balance, but knowing yours is really important
Yeah. I mean, there is definitely a time where you like just sort of have to clear your head, where that it's
for sure.
like it's all a little bit too much and you just got to find the time to walk away. And I think it's hard. I
Yeah.
think it's hard being in the news right now, covering news where there is a relentless
Yeah.
grind of the last 11 months specifically going on. And I think
Oh, I know.
between that spinning right into an election cycle, and we don't cover election stuff. There is not as many Jewish candidates running this year, so we're not necessarily going to cover it as in depth as we have in past years. But it's just so much all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we haven't talked, I think we've kept the conversation nice and light, right? But this is a heavy time.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and so that isn't a kind of undercurrent to a lot of the things that we're doing. I think when we're looking for connection and looking for ways to be creative and looking for the right balance between, community and solitude, I think, it's important, I think, to acknowledge what's going on underneath it all and some of the things that are just, part of our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely. So, to switch back to nice and light,
Yeah.
when can we see the Long Honeymoon playing? Do you have any gigs lined up?
Uh, we are um, we are playing. I've got a songwriting thing with Adam at the Driftwood in Minneapolis on September 25th. We're doing a full band gig, the Long Honeymoon, also at the Driftwood in South Minneapolis on October 18th. And then we are performing at I think Temple Bethel on November 3rd. So
Oh,
really
yes, you are
excited
for a
to be part of
Jewfolk
that
event.
event. Yeah, yeah. So that'll be November 3rd. We'll do I think mostly original songs, but hopefully a few cover songs and songs that other folks know. And yeah, I think that should be really a ton of fun.
That's awesome. Well, we will have the links to where people can find you. I also just a little teaser for folks. You'll be able to hear a snippet of music from the Long Honeymoon. You were kind enough to send some music over for us to use as
Of
the
course.
intro and outro music for an upcoming podcast series that I am a part of, that your wife Laura is a part of, also. That we will be able people will be able to get the teaser episode of that
I'm
later
so
this
glad to be
week.
asked. Oh, I should mention we have a website. It's thelonghoneymoon.com. So
Yes,
we've got video clips and gig lists, and you can sign up for our mailing list and all that kind of thing.
and it is what if people were to like ask the style, what would you say? Like to me, it feels very sort of Americana, singer-songwriter,
Oh yeah.
acoustic, quasi pop kind of. Like how would you describe the Long
Yeah, it's
Honeymoon?
fun. I would say rock pop. We
Oh,
love
okay.
like people like Elvis Costello for sure, and I play
Oh,
mostly acoustic guitar. But there's
awesome.
7 people in the band, and we,
Oh,
we can definitely rock. There are four of us who sing, and so we do a lot of harmonies. We love a lot of 70s and 80s music. I would say, I mean, my daughter does say that she feels like it sounds more modern, but we love, which is the highest compliment,
Yeah.
we can get. But we love, the Cars and Stevie Wonder and David Bowie, and I'm a huge Lou Reed fan, and
Oh,
I think it's sort of um, combination of all of those things.
that's awesome.
Yeah, super fun.
Look, as a child of the 80s, like you mentioned the Cars, like that's sweet spot
Yeah.
of stuff I was listening to on the radio back, as a kid. So
Yeah, we
that's
all love
awesome.
that.
That's awesome.
So it's been great.
Well, awesome. Last couple questions and we'll
Yeah.
get you out of here. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Um, Passover. Isn't that everybody's favorite Jewish holiday?
That's almost everybody's favorite Jewish holiday. We get
Yeah, I mean, you can't
some
beat
variation.
Passover. Yeah, it's great.
Any particular reason?
Um, yeah, I mean, the food and the story and the community and um, yeah, I think it's all of those things.
That's awesome. And what is your favorite Jewish food?
Uh, if bagels still count as Jewish,
We are absolutely
oh,
taking
yeah,
those as Jewish. Yes.
I grew up in on Long Island, and so everything bagel with whitefish. Actually, an egg everything bagel with whitefish salad is one of my favorite all-time foods. But I can't go wrong with boy. I mean, you can't go. There's so many good
Right. How do you
choices,
pick?
right?
How do you pick?
Right. I will say I love the jellies for Passover. The jellies and the marshmallows. I just love them.
The jellies are my oldest child's favorite treats, and that and the ring gels, the
Oh,
marshmallows,
so good.
the chocolate covered marshmallows are my youngest child's favorite Passover food.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are
Fruit
the things
slices
that
are
we
a big part of
absolutely have to. Those
Passover.
are the absolute things we have to shop for
Yeah.
when we are collecting for Passover. So,
Yeah, yeah. What's your favorite food?
boy, again, it's so hard to pick. I love a bagel. Was happy to participate in the Twin Cities bagel challenge that
Oh,
we did here
awesome.
at Jewfolk
Yeah,
recently. It's just worked out that we've done it every 6 years at Jewfolk, and so we were due this year.
that's great.
The quality has vastly improved, I will say, in my
Oh, yeah,
22 years here in the Twin Cities. The quality of bagel has
absolutely.
vastly improved. Love latkes. Love a good
Yeah.
latke. Brisket, can't go wrong.
hmm Yeah, good
I,
stuff.
I kugel, I love, like blintzes.
It's hard to choose. It's hard
It's
to
hard
choose.
to choose, and now I'm making
Yeah.
myself very hungry.
Right. You didn't mention babka, but that's pretty good too.
It's really good. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely further down on my list. I definitely prefer the more
It is.
savories.
Yeah. All right.
But it's a lot of good choices. We do.
Yeah.
I will say this: we do food good.
We do
We
food
do
good.
food good.
I
We have
agree.
good options.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lee Zukor, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will have links to all of the Long Honeymoon upcoming stuff and Jewfolk upcoming stuff in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun. Thank you.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jewfolk Podcast Network and a product of Jewfolk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.